Hey guys, James Commissioner from Kartz-N-Fartz. So tonight I'm going to install a Bluetooth speaker system on a club car precedent. I've done a lot of these. I'm going to show you my radio that I like to go to. It's nothing crazy, nothing really fancy, but it sounds awesome. It is a marine radio. We're going to install it on this rear underbody. Basically, it's that whole rear bumper section right there, but that's part of it, which is right there. And I'm going to take you step by step on how I install it. And we are going to use a step down converter, because if you just hook it to two batteries, eventually down the road, if you don't use the card enough, it's going to get your batteries all out of sync and you're going to have a problem. So anyway, it's going to be a kind of a one-handed video, but that card is sold. Customer wants a Bluetooth radio. I don't know how many I bought over Amazon, probably close to 100. Never had anybody complain about it. Again, I think it's 120 watts or something like that, but nothing crazy loud, but I promise you this, it's enough to get the HOA on your case. So I think you'll be happy with it. So let's get started at it. All right, so here's the one that I like to use. It's made by Boss. It is a marine radio. And apologize for the background. Evidently the neighborhood's having some kind of firework display, but this radio system, it is an AM/FM radio. We're not going to use the radio function. I'll explain that as we go along, but this whole thing is waterproof. So I've had them in the past on personal carts. I've gotten mud and water in these things, blow them out with your leaf blower. You know, cut the radio on, it blows the water out. I've never had a problem with them before. So some things that you're going to need, I like to use a right angle drill. If you don't have one, you can make it work without it. You're definitely going to need a 6-inch hole saw. You're also going to need a 3-inch hole saw. Yeah, 3-inch right there. Just some basic electrical stuff. I keep all mine in one little bag, some crimpers and stuff. You're also going to need some wire. Another thing that I picked up on Amazon, I picked up this voltage converter. Yeah, if it'll come out. Tough doing this with one hand, but this is a little step down. This goes from 48 volts down to, it says 12 volts, 10 amp max. I've never had a problem with these in the past, so it works fine for this factory system. And you know what? I was wondering if it tells me what the wattage is. I'm sure it says that on here somewhere. But anyway, I'm not going to waste a lot of time on that. But I'm thinking it's like, all right, guys, I had to find out. It's 180 watts. So this is a 180 watt system putting out. And I promise you, that is fireworks going on down the road. I don't live in a neighborhood they're doing drive-by shootings. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, we're going to mount all this stuff up. These are some of the, I guess the blanks or whatever that got drilled out from these underbodies in the rear on previous installs. That's what your head unit's going to fit in, which is right there. It's not as big as it is on that picture. So what you can do is take these and just kind of space them out and take a measurement and figure out where you want to put them. So if we lay my two speakers right over here, and leave yourself about 1 inch, because about a 1/2 inch is going to be overlapping and you don't want the speaker grill touching whatever kind of seat system you have. So this is a double take seat system that I have right here, rear seat. So I'm going to take my tape measure, not with one hand, but I'm gonna do it off camera, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm exactly where I need to be. Now, let me tell you a little trick I did. I do so many of these, I made myself a little jig. So, unfortunately, this jig does not work on a double take seat because of these struts that they have right here for the Max 5 seat. But on a GTW rear seat, this thing works great. So I've got holes drilled out here for the little pin that goes through your sweater basket, and it just slides right over. I know exactly where to drill my 6 inches on the outside and my 3-inch on the middle. So that works perfect, except for this type of seat. So we'll put that down, and I just made that out of an old windshield. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to measure this and center everything up. And I do like to shift. I don't like to put my radio in the very middle because it's just more difficult to reach it. So I'm gonna shift it forward. I'm still gonna leave myself about an inch gap right here. There's plenty of room underneath here. I'm not gonna crawl underneath the cart on camera, but there's plenty of room underneath there, but I just want it accessible for the owners to cut it on and off. So, well, didn't see it. I was gonna show you the fireworks. Make sure you know I don't live in a drive-by neighborhood. So anyway, let's go ahead and get that measured out and start our holes. All right, guys, so I decided to go ahead and take the seat back off. It's easier to get to that way if you don't have a right angle drill or straight drill. So as I had the templates in place, I went ahead and drilled a pilot hole. That way, when I do have this big hole saw for the speakers, it's going to be easier to get a straight in cut for it, and also the 3-inch in the middle. So I decided to go ahead and do that. It might be better for you to do that too. Different seats have different clearances, but for video purposes, that's a better way to do it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut my holes. All right, I got my holes cut, so I'm ready for that step. And you can use like a paintbrush because this thing's gonna throw little crumbs everywhere. But I use this little cordless, I think they call it electric broom. But anyway, now let's get to unwrapping everything that comes in the box and see what we need to do with that. All right, guys, got everything unpacked. So you got your two 6.5-inch speakers. And again, it's a 6-inch hole that these are going to fit in. On the back side of it, right along in here, it's going to come with these little foam adhesive stickers. So again, not with one hand, but peel that foam sticker off and just stick those on there. And I guess that's going to help it secure well on your package shelf. So got two of those. It did come with wire. These wire and these connectors, one of them is very small compared to the other one, which is like a standard female end connector. So I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna cut these wires to fit and attach them to my head unit. So your head unit's gonna have a mess of wires, and we're gonna go over what all I use in the golf cart field. It also comes with like a little UV cover, and again, that's for boats. But I'm gonna tell you this: warn your customer, or take notes yourself. Don't put this cover on there and forget about the radio zone, because it will drain your battery down. So if you're going to use this cover, like I said, it's designed for UV. This is a waterproof head unit, waterproof speakers. Just be sure you cut the radio off when you park your golf cart. Comes with your owner's manual and instructions. Does come with a radio antenna. Now we're going to coil this up and tuck it underneath the golf cart. That's going to be my method. The reason I do that, I don't like anything laying outside that may get pulled or snagged on. These bolts here are going to screw right in the back of your head unit, and there's a bracket right there that's going to kind of sandwich that to hold that head unit to that rear shelf. You're going to need some wire. I use 16 gauge wire, buy it in bulk. Big Amazon guy, makes it so much convenient. I don't know how much you're going to need of this, probably somewhere around 5 foot, 6 foot of this. But anyway, as we get to installing it, maybe we'll measure it and then we'll figure it out. Some wire strippers, also some little wire cutters. That makes it real easy. Some heat shrink too. That makes it real nice. If you don't want to use heat shrink, you can use butt-in connectors like that. But I like the heat shrink since this thing's going to be in the elements. And then we're also going to wire our voltage reducer up to it. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and stick this foam off the camera, and we'll jump on the wiring of the head unit. All right, guys, so see the remnants. So I've got my foam stuck on the back of my speakers. I took my speaker wire, and look how short I cut it. I only cut maybe 10 inches, because you don't need very much. The head unit is mounted very close to the speakers, and that's just something else to dangle down. Now, as you look at the label, it's going to tell you what colors go to which speaker wires. So the violet, the very first two, the violet and black are your rear, right rear, and at the bottom, you'll see green and black are your left rear. So the violet and black, let's see if I can find them. Those two right there. And then my green and black. Where you at? There you are right there. So those are my only speaker wires I'm gonna use. So I'm only using 2 speakers. If you want to hook up more later, you could. I'm telling you, it sounds so good, I don't know why you would want to. So for this application, I am going to cut the white. Let's see what color the speaker wires are. The other ones are gray and white. So these 2 white and the gray with the black, white with the white black. I'm gonna cut those off and insulate them so they don't touch each other, but I'm not gonna be using them, so I'm gonna cut them. Also, there is a blue wire. That blue wire is for a power antenna. I'm not gonna have one, so we're gonna cut it off and insulate it. There's some RCA jacks for amplifiers, but you know what? I'm not gonna have those, so those are just gonna be zip tied out of the way. There is a USB input. I'm not gonna route that. Nobody ever uses a USB stick anymore. If you do, you can route it however you figure. And then you've got your antenna, which I'm gonna open that up. And again, I'm gonna zip tie everything together. Now here's something that might be a little tricky or a little different. So this is your power source. So this is what you wanna hook your constant power, like that would normally go to your battery, which we're gonna have constant power. And then your ground, and this is on key switched. So if this was going in a boat, when you cut the key off, it would cut the radio off. Well, unfortunately, that's not going to work with a golf cart. So I am going to tie that key switched in to the constant power. Inside of this box is a fuse. I'm actually going to tie that in on this side of it. So instead of wrapping the wires together down here, I'm going to strip back this yellow wire, tie the red wire into the yellow wire, and that way, if anything voltage spikes, hopefully it blows the fuse before it passes through the red wire to the head unit. Also off camera, I screwed in these studs that came with the hardware pack. I used a nut driver and a 7mm socket. It comes with a whole bunch of extra ones. And if you're doing this, by yourself, you may drop one, just pick up another one. You only need 2 of them. So those 2 right there get the job done, but they give you a lot more than what you need. And that will, when this bracket slides on there, you can see the 2 holes. When it slides on there and presses it against that rear underbody, all you need is that one nut. And they've got these little knurls on the end of it. I don't know if you can see it. There you go. So they kind of bite in and keep them from backing out. Hadn't had any of them back out yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and strip back my wires. I am going to connect them to my violet and my green, because those are my rear outputs. And I'm gonna put some heat shrink on there. I'm gonna trim the other ones back and hook up my antenna. Like I said, it's not gonna pick up very well, but I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up because it came with the kit. And get this thing ready to, and also I'm gonna work with these power wires and get it ready to drop into the golf cart. All right, guys, so I've got my speaker wires heat shrinked in. You can see, just little short leads, that's all I need. On my power source, I've got my red wire tied into my yellow wire after the fuse. So this wire here, I just cut it about 3 feet. We'll see how long we need it. This is going to go all the way to my voltage reducer, and I'll show you where I like to mount those. And next step, I plugged up my radio antenna. If you're gonna work on these golf carts, you need to get you a big bag of zip ties. So I'm gonna zip tie this up tight so it doesn't rattle and bounce around, and we'll show you what goes next. All right, guys, so I've got that zip tied up. So when I tuck that down in there, that's just gonna kind of dangle down. It's not gonna have a problem. So everything is nice and tight. The only thing hanging down is my speaker wires, and of course this lead wire that is going to go to my converter, my 12-volt converter. So if I look at this, the output side is what's 12 volt. The input, what's going to my golf cart batteries, is 48 volts. So my yellow is my positive, and of course black is your negative. So on the ends, they've got this one I got and every other one that I've gotten. It's got like solder melted on there, which makes it very difficult to strip the wires back and put a little bit of heat shrink and tubing on there. So I'm gonna suggest for you to take some wire cutters, watch your eyes, and get rid of those ends before you strip the wires, and then put your heat shrink tubing. And by the way, about 35 inches was plenty enough cable. So 35, 40 inches, whatever it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and connect that, or actually I'm gonna go ahead and strip the wires up, feed it through the hole in the golf cart, and before I start trying to run my heat gun next to the batteries, I'm gonna lift it up in the air. And actually, let me show you where this is gonna mount. So I'm gonna use 2 screws. There's plenty of room right here. And the distance between this battery tub and the outside is about that thick. So as long as you don't use screws any bigger than that, I'm going to mount it right there. It's out of the way of the battery cables, out of the way if they have to do battery service down the road. And I'm just going to use some short screws and screw it in right there. So the radio head unit is going to fit through here. The wire is going to come through a gap right through here, feed in between the batteries, and then hook up to my yellow and black wire. So I'm gonna go ahead and strip the wires, get it ready to go. The other wire that I'm going to need is I'm gonna need a wire for my input, which is my 48 volt input. So it's gonna feed through this battery channel and then split off to your main positive and your main negative right there. So I'll measure that wire. What I'm gonna put on the end of those are gonna be these little 5/16 ring terminal. So they work great. I'm gonna use that same 16 gauge wire and go ahead and get this pre-wired up and ready to mount in there. All right, so on my input side, I've got my wires connected with my heat shrink tubing. Got my 5/16 ring terminals. That's the size you need, 5/16. Find these on Amazon, pretty cheap. So I've got my wires stripped and ready to connect together for my 12 volts out of my voltage reducer. And then once I get it over there, and I've been using a little heat gun. I need to get my extension cord out because I've got it plugged up right there. But I'll get it over there to the golf cart and I'll heat shrink it together and start mounting everything up. And by the way, like I said, just get your 2 Phillips head screws. They're the easiest things to put on there. So that's what I'm gonna mount that to the golf cart battery tub. All right, guys, first shoot, I'm gonna try to do this with one hand. So I dropped everything down. You can see all the wires are just kind of dangling down. So I'm gonna reach underneath here, pull out my long wire. And if you look right here, we're gonna shove it, there is a gap. So we'll pull that forward. And let's see how much room I can see back there. I can probably feel better than I can see. Okay, that fuse block is about right there. Now, you can see how much room's underneath here. A tremendous amount of room. So if you had to crawl underneath there and check the fuse, you could. And so from here, I'm going to route this wire underneath this battery cable here and tuck it down. This particular cart has a watering system. We'll go underneath the watering system and maybe even over to the side a little bit. Not often I do this with one hand, but I wanted to show you guys. So here's my wire. So I might be 6 inches too long. So I may trim that up just a hair, and I'm gonna go ahead and screw that. Once I get it connected and heat shrink tubing on it, I'm gonna screw it in there, and then the other cable I can hook to your batteries. So I'm gonna try to neaten this up a little bit off camera, and then we'll come back. All right, guys, you can see I got my voltage reducer mounted up there. Just 2 little Phillips head screws. Super simple. It's out of the way. It's got plenty of clearance. I did run my wire down between these 2 center batteries. That's your bucket harness for your headlights, tail lights. And then I took that wire down near the bottom. I'll probably end up zip tying it over here to this right tail light for the bucket harness, just to make sure it stays out of the way. Now, these wires here went to my input, my 48 volt input. So what I'll do is, I'll try to do this with one hand. I'm gonna grab the wire and separate it. Actually, with this set up, not too good, but it does set up. All right, so I separated that wire. Now, before I hook this to my positive, which I want to hook this thin wire on the top, keep your heavy cable all the way against the battery. But before I hook that up, I'm gonna go ahead and mount my head unit and go ahead and plug in my speakers. So I grabbed my nut driver, and the reason I like to mount the head unit first, because you don't have to crawl underneath the cart like I was to begin with. I can reach through these big speaker holes, and I can twist my nut driver and secure it and make sure that it's centered. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that again off camera, 7mm, and get that snug. And I need to get my little U-bracket that's gonna slide right where it needs to, and it's gonna keep this head unit secure. So let me go ahead and get that done. All right, guys, that worked to plan, and I did not drop any of my nuts. I brought a couple extras over here. So now I'm going to grab one of my speakers, and at this point I can reach underneath here. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not keeping up what's left, what's right. They're both on the rear channel. We're going to leave it at that. So I'm going to plug in the small and the large one. Then I'm going to center the speaker and drill the screws directly, let it self-tap into this plastic. Now, your kit is going to come with these metal clamps that I guess you could smash together, and you could actually try to feed them in there and let them catch. There's two of them in there. Let them try to catch that right there. But I've never had one come out. It's a golf cart. These screws are long enough. That plastic, you saw how thick it was when I had the little template. So I'm just going to use 4 screws. I'm going to discard these metal clamps. If you feel better, use them. But let's go ahead and get the speaker mounted one at a time. All right, so I got the speaker just kind of set in place and plugged up. And another thing you can do is you can look down on the holes and make sure that you see plastic on all 4 holes. If you get a little off, you may go straight through the side of the hole. In other words, your speaker may go kind of like that, and you don't want to miss it. I know that's exaggeration. That one is centered. I like to look at the name Boss, make sure those lines are straight across, and go ahead and start drilling them in. All right, so that mounted up nicely. So I'm so glad I took that seat off. It's a whole lot easier to show you guys this on the video. So I'm gonna mount the rear seat up, and then I'm going to connect up my voltage reducer. All right, guys, so I've got my positive terminal hooked up. And if I didn't mention this earlier, always flip your run toe switch down to toe when you're working on anything electrical. So now we need to hook up our negative side. So I'm gonna hook up my negative cable. Now, when I hook up this from the voltage reducer, it's gonna spark. Don't let it freak you out. It's gonna happen. I get a little antsy every time I hook one up, but it is what it is. Get ready for the spark. Let's see if it sparks when we do this. Yep, it did. Not bad, not bad. All right, so we're gonna snug this up, and look at there, it came alive. So we're gonna hook the band or the source over to BT audio. I know that glare is horrible, isn't it? Will it show it? Nah, it doesn't really. There it goes. So it's going to say BT audio. It doesn't look this bad in person, but this camera is horrible. But since I'm videoing with my cell phone, let me go grab my wife's phone and show you how good it sounds. And to cut it off, you'll just push it and hold it, and it will say, "See you," and then it will power itself off. But let me tighten up these cables, check all your cables, but don't let that spark freak you out the first time you hook up a voltage reducer. All right, guys, so we got everything fired up and on. Had to grab another phone here. So if you cut your Bluetooth on and you want to look for that Boss Audio MGR350B, so let's connect to that. All right, looks like we're connected. Pull up some music. So that radio goes up to like 46 for the volume. I've got it set to a 32, and I'm just using the side of my my phone for the volume. But it's gonna be difficult on the video to see how good it sounds, but it really sounds good. So let's crank it up and get my wife complaining here. And again, that's only at level, I think I had it at 32 out of 46. All right, guys, well, that concludes my little video on how I install the radio. 180 watts, 2 speakers, it's everything that any of my customers has ever wanted. So if you want something a little more, subwoofers, multiple amplifiers, I'm sure there's other ways to do it. But anyway, but this is the way that I do it. So again, this is James at Kartz-N-Fartz. You know, I don't get paid by this product. I just happened to stumble across it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's just been my go-to radio. So anyway, hope this helps, maybe give you some ideas of what you want to do differently on yours. I've got the same system on my limo cart over there. It's a mess, I got stuff all over it. And I've got a lot of other accessories other than just a radio and headlights. So I actually have a fuse block, but I've got videos, so follow my channel. Be sure to click and subscribe. A lot of helpful hints, especially on club cars, because that's kind of what I do most of my work on. But would love to help you. Also, I am a Plum Quick dealer, so I usually keep the Plum Quick Bandits in stock. Also an eco battery lithium dealer. So lots of big advantages on those lithium batteries. I've got one over there. Actually, I got both, the Plum Quick and the lithium battery in my my wife's cart. So again, thanks again. Be sure to click and subscribe. That helps me out. If there's any questions I can help, comment below. And be sure to share this video with your friends. And get on the channel. There's a lot of little things on these club cars that you wouldn't think about that someone else has already gone through. Exactly how I learned a lot of this stuff is by watching other guys that's been through it before me. But you guys have an awesome day, and hopefully you won't keep the neighbors awake with your new radio. Take care.